My name is David Nazario. My pronouns are he, him. I identify as a Afro-Puerto Rican queer man with respect to the indigenous and aboriginal people. I also identify as two-spirit. Please do not call me Dave or Spanish. My family name, as far as I know, comes from a small town in Portugal called Nazario. I speak English, hip hop, and a small amount of Spanish. This is what looking bilingual means to me.
Describe to us your journey with your Afro-Latinidad and with the term Afro-Latino.
I say my journey started from, from the earliest times that I can remember, because my mom, who's African American, was always very clear with us that that we're Black and Latino boys, and that's myself and my brother. So that's what we always identified as. It was never one more than the other. I come from a big family on my father's side who's Puerto Rican, so I was always surrounded by my Puerto Rican family and the traditions and the customs and cultures and the language and everything that came along with that. I'd say more recently, maybe like 3, 4 years ago, I've started to identify as Afro-Puerto Rican to centralize and kind of, I guess, not specialize, but focus in on the Latino-ness of my own unique Latino-ness. And my father's, being from Puerto Rico, so I want to identify that and celebrate that when I self-identify. So I identify as Afro-Puerto Rican.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that journey during your childhood time with your Latinidad? You mentioned a little bit about it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we were always, surrounded by the culture. We didn't learn the language as children, but it was something that was always, around us, and we, grew up in a predominantly Latino neighborhood, and we were mainly around a lot of Puerto Rican people growing up and going and being a native of Reading and going to the Reading School District. I was surrounded by a lot of different facets of Latinidad.
And the beauty of Reading was not only the Latinidad, but like the mix of cultures. And you segued a little bit in our previous conversation as to how language fit in your childhood, in your upbringing there. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so my brothers and I, we always wanted to know the language, but we honestly never took it that serious. In high school, even before high school, around the house, language was something, Spanish language. My mom wasn't too sure that we would learn English if we learned Spanish first. So that was kind of I don't want to say a misstep, but I think that's how she would describe it as well. Because she did regret doing that because it kind of did prohibit us from learning the language. But we were always, we always felt like we were a part of it, and it was always a language that we were familiar with, and we could pick up little key words. And of course, we learned the swear words first, and and even to this day, I'm very proud to use the words that I do know and use the language in a way that I'm comfortable with.
It's so funny how many people say, I learned the swear words first. And I'm just like, it's not a bad thing. Then if somebody's talking to you, what they're talking to you,
Yeah,
like apart from seeing them, but also, if you got to give it back, give it
exactly.
back.
Exactly.
And you talked to me about taking ownership within your cultures, which I loved the way that you said that. And I think that it's something that a lot of folks would love to hear more about. And tell us what that means for you and potentially other Afro-Latinos.
I think it's, small things like not choosing one. Sometimes people reduce your identity to, well, what is your mom? Oh, that's what you are. Or, most people see me, they see my hair, my nose, my lips. Even though these are traits of Latino people, a lot of times these are characteristics that are assigned to Black people. I've always identified with both. And I think that ways that people can do that is to always identify with both and not pick one or the other, to try to, learn the language. I am trying to learn it now. I think it's important to connect back, to if you're from Puerto Rico, if you're from Mexico, Colombia, what have you, to visit those places, and learn as much about the culture as you can. Obviously, to read, to advocate, and to let it be known that you are a part of this community, and it's important to you to help cultivate the tradition and keep it alive.
You make a really good point because so many people have been taught or told to shy away from intersectionality.
Hmm.
Um, And something that one of my previous interviewees said, Gina Marie Rodriguez, she said, why can't we be in several categories? Why can't we tick several boxes? Why does it have to be, you have to be categorized according to one thing? And you are a magnificent force in your community. And for anybody that does not know David in Reading, I mean, you can't, I think if I tried to avoid meeting you, somebody would have been like, no, you're obviously going to meet him. Like everywhere I went, I saw you speak in several places. Always mega inspiring. It's just an amazing thing because not everybody's made for that, or that's not everybody's role, but you really embraced your role. What's your experience being Afro-Latino there in particular? So let's like really put that under the scope. And how would you like to see it grow from what it is that you know to the future?
That's a great question. And I feel like my, as close as I am to my family, who, my Latino family, oftentimes my relationship to my community, in terms of my Latino community here in Reading, it does feel similar to my relationship with my family. Like, whereas I know their family, I know they got my back, and they know, hope they know that I have theirs, but there is a disconnect, you know what I mean? My father told me not too long ago that he doesn't like my hair like this because he's used to seeing me look as like a businessman, so, right, that face. So there's a lack of understanding, and I think that's the same thing that's happening on a communal level when it comes to relations between Black and Latino people. I feel like that's happening with local government, with local leadership, where there's a disconnect between these two communities that are actually the same community. So oftentimes I feel like the disconnect that exists with me and my family. I asked my abuela if she liked my hair not too long ago. Te gusta? She reached for the scissors.
Oh.
So that type of disconnect. Now I know my father, they love me 100%. They have my back 100%, just the same way that this community does. And I felt that, and I feel that in my heart, but there's still a disconnect. But at the same time, there's younger generations in my family that are changing that narrative. There are people like yourself that are changing the narrative with shows like this. So it feels frustrating at times, but it also feels hopeful, and it feels like natural growth that our people are going through.
This is something that gets asked to me frequently, to other people I know that kind of share the same spaces as you and I do. A lot of younger folks are super vocal and super intelligent, smart, and capable. But like you said, it does hurt a little bit, doesn't it? It hurts when you get that. And I feel like we find ways to laugh about it. Because we know it's not, your dad and your grandmother aren't trying to harm you purposefully. It's just really, I've had similar things in my family. How can we best support younger folks to deal with that while recognizing that they're still allowed to love those people, but they also have to digest that? That's a really heavy question to just lay on you, but it's something I get frequently, and I'm developing, I guess, resource answers.
I think it's just to stay open, right? So the young people can learn from me and my experiences, and I can also learn from the young people's experiences. Like, I'll say, like a Dear Reading group, for example, that are like 10 years younger than me. It's super important that they're able to learn from people that might be 10 years older than them. Either whether it's myself or not, but also that we are able to learn from that generation. And I think it's just that exchange of information and us being willing to change both sides, and even the younger generation, because sometimes the younger generation gets kind of, they cancel culture and this and that, and that's it, But I think everybody has to be malleable in order to figure out what's working best for everybody.
And I like that because it's recognizing that all parties can learn from each other. That age doesn't indicate that you know everything. Being young and being more, better informed in a lot of ways, or more willing to have these conversations, doesn't mean that you know everything. That both parties can definitely learn from each other.
Right.
And I'm in your category. Like, I'm constantly like, yes, what they said, and then I'm like, what you said here, what you said there. If we can just kind of
yes. Now let me go meditate so I can really decide what where I stand with all of this. It's a lot.
Yes, and dismantling what, and now I'm generalizing in terms of what age or what age group or whatever generation is dismantling, but dismantling what we have been so accepting of, learning from others and being ready to say, oh, maybe I was wrong until now, or maybe I just didn't see it the way that I should have been seeing it, but I'm here
Right.
now. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. You spoke to me about upcoming works of yours and creating a new narrative for Black and Latino men. To spirit, not straight queer journey, is how you explained it to me. Could you, A, tell us your life's passion and work for those people that are not familiar with your work, and B, explain this concept and where you see it growing to?
Awesome. So my life's passion and work is I'm a writer, educator, and speaker, and I've been blessed enough to be able to work only in those spaces. I've never had a full-time job. I've been able to work as an educator while pursuing my journey, my writing and speaking journey. In 2018, I released my first book, Make Love Your Religion. So since then, I've just been growing, that book and working, doing some freelance work and doing some speaking, which I really enjoy. And I was teaching at a Reading Area Community College. And now I'm actually taking some time off to put out my second book, which is a book of poetry. And the title is Poems Written in the Bathtub While Coming Out. And it's yes, coming spelled not the normal way of coming. With a U. So this is very much outside of what people know David Nazario as, and I'm super excited about it. And it's about my journey, and it's with my sexuality, and it's very much, because it's about my journey, it very much talks about the intersectionality of being brown and anything but straight. It's such an impactful thing, and I think that if we're able to celebrate it, and if I'm able to help create a new narrative for people, for men that identify in this way, I'm just happy that I can use my writing to help with that.
In case, because I feel that some people might not know what two-spirit means. Can you explain that a little bit more?
I'm on a very, and this is a term that I identify with now, but as I learn more, it may be a term that I don't feel as comfortable identifying with. But as of today, I know that it is more having to do with the spiritual aspect of sexuality and the spiritual aspect of gender. And two-spirit is a word that comes from Aboriginal and Native people, and it was used to describe people who could identify with spiritually with both aspects of their personality, being, both of those aspects being feminine and masculine. That's how I understand it.
Thank you for that.
My book is available where books are sold. If you are interested in following along on the journey, you can find the book on Facebook, and I'm on YouTube as well as on Instagram just by searching my name.